I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
The Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
Well. We have another edition of Pack Therapy. We have another chance for NC State to prove themselves. And, of course, when we're in the triangle, there's really only two ways you can prove yourself. You can beat Duke, which NC State did, or you can beat North Carolina, which always remains elusive. Scott Wood, Wolfpack great, joining me here. And NC State's now won 4 ACC games in a row. Going back to that Miami game, I don't know about you, Scott, but I actually think Miami's the best team in the ACC. So I was really impressed with the way that they won that game.
I wouldn't say they're the most talented team.
I didn't say that.
I think there's some more talented teams, but I think they are well coached, and they've got very similar to NC State in a way. I feel like they have really good guard play and some dogs that just go out there and play hard. And you know what you're going to get out of them. So, you know, it was a lot of fun to watch that game. It's the first game of the year, I can honestly say the first half, NC State's defense kick-started the offense. Not in the second half, though. The second half was a different story. But the first half was the first time I can actually say that NC State's defense and their pressure and their tenacity really jump-started the offense.
I'll tell you what I was most impressed with in the Miami win. And you mentioned the second half. They're up 10 at the half. Here comes Larrañaga out of the break. It's Isaiah Wong. It's a steady diet of Omier. I mean, that kid, my goodness, that man, excuse me. Like, Nicaragua, Arkansas State, I don't know where the heck they found him. He is a monster.
Yeah.
Super athletic, wide. Okay, I was super impressed with him. I think that's fairly clear. They're feeding. The blood is in the water. Here they come.
Yeah.
NC State stopped the bleeding. And I thought that was a really important test for this group because after that game, I was willing to say it, and I said it on WRAL. I'll say it again here. I think NC State has a good basketball team.
They are a good basketball team, and I think that was the type of game I wanted to see. You know, I feel like the Virginia Tech game, if you want to call that close at the end, you know,
it was.
They haven't really been able to prove that they can close out a game.
Yeah.
And this was a game that was tight down the stretch. Isaiah Wong got hot, which scared me. But again, I think that there's two huge keys to this team. Jarkel and Casey can miss every single shot, and they're still going to be great defenders, which is a big piece. And they were able to stop the bleeding. I think they controlled Isaiah towards the end of the game a little bit better. I think he had like 7 straight points or something at one point. But they did. They just remained calm, good composure, close it out.
Let's take a brief sidebar here for what you and I consider good coaching. Okay?
Okay.
Like Jim Larrañaga, we don't have to sit here and go through his resume. You look at the stuff they run, you look how they go about preparing for a game, and you go, that's a good coach, right?
Yeah.
So second half, halftime they make an actual adjustment, and it goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. It was a lot of Wong. They go down the stretch. They're running a lot of the same sets, but Wong doesn't shoot the ball. So I ask you, is that bad coaching, or you could see the frustration on Larrañaga's face when somebody named Bensley Joseph, who I've never heard of, is yakking up shots? Like, time and space, man. You got to know what the hell's going on your own team. And Bensley, my buddy, I'm sorry, but that, in my opinion, that is the reason why NC State won the game, because the wrong guy was taking the shots.
Yeah.
Now, those plays were pretty clearly for Wong. So and Wong gave it up a couple of times. To your point about Casey playing the defense and Jarkel playing the defense that they did, do you put that on the coach, or do you have to sit there like Larrañaga and throw your hands over your head and go, why is my guy not shooting the ball right now?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of it's basketball IQ. You gotta understand that certain people need the ball at certain times. There's certain places Like I don't want to give DJ Burns the ball when he's in transition. You want to give it to him when he's low and has position on the block. Same thing here. When you start to get into the crunch time of the game, you got to know who are the guys that are your playmakers and will create. But you got to credit NC State. I think they did a good job of, even when they're trying, they know where the ball's going. They're obviously trying to do their best to deny, keep the ball out of his hands. And I just think their tenacity towards the end, they started to get DJ in some pick and roll action a little bit more, and I think they were able to start to create some advantage, especially with Isaiah Wong there. But they started to do a lot better job, especially down the stretch of that game.
I want to hit DJ first because he had 7 assists in that game, and I thought he was really, really good. I thought the definition – nice glasses. I thought that was the definition of we need a bucket. It doesn't necessarily have to come from DJ, but the ball needs to go into him because he really is a good passer.
And I think that's what makes him so dangerous is he has a good feel for where everything is. And I think you give credit to Greg Gant. We're going to give credit to Ernest Ross because they have realized that nobody within the vicinity of 20 miles is guarding them at PNC right now. So what teams are starting to do is they're like, okay, we're going to double team off Ernest and we're going to double team off Greg. But they've been smart enough when they see their man go to double, they're cutting towards the basket. And when they cut towards the basket, they may not get the layup. But now that guard opposite has to drop to take away that layup, and it's opening things on the other side. I think even in the Georgia Tech game, you saw it a little bit, even though they ran that junk zone for most of the game. He was able to get that pass over there. It was even a couple of them were to Terquavion. So his willingness to pass and how well he passes has opened up a lot of things for State, especially in the half-court offense, where I feel like they struggle most of the time.
I wanted to start with DJ because I feel like he has become the focal point of the offense in the half-court set.
Mm-hmm.
We see Terquavion at Georgia Tech. We know what Terquavion can be, right?
No.
I think you watch football. I think you watched the Giants this weekend, and you saw Daniel Jones against the Vikings, right?
Oh.
He was outstanding. He was unbelievable. But his body of work up until this point was such that we did not know that he was capable of that. And watching Ernest Ross against Miami, I have the same thoughts. We didn't know Ernest Ross was capable of that. 6'9", he's bouncy, he's athletic, but he's skinny.
Yeah.
He's not the biggest dude in the history of the world. He doesn't have the prettiest shot in the history of the world. He's still trying to find his way. But I think you're right. He has what he's finding in his role is if they double DJ, I can get to the basket. I can also rebound. The rebound he had to basically win the game in overtime was a grown-ass man's rebound.
Yeah.
And I just said he's skinny, not the strongest guy in the history of the world, but he was on that play. And I think those are the kind of moments that you have to be a good team.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of moments, quite frankly, we haven't seen out of any of these groups.
Yeah.
Basically going back until right before the pandemic with a Devin Daniels group that was really kind of charging hard towards the end of that season.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we talked about on the last episode is just the role play. I feel like they are really coming into the rules and understanding their roles. And we just touched on it a little bit. I think DJ gets the ball inside, all of a sudden a double team's coming over there. If you're not comfortable shooting a three or making the three at a high clip and your man's double teaming, cut to the basket. If you don't get the layup, now all of a sudden you have a guard that is trying to crack down and block you out, and you've got a 6'3" guy trying to block you out. And like you said, he's long, athletic, can get rebounds and go back up because the two big guys are literally trying to double team DJ.
So NC State, in my opinion, the Miami game was, okay, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
It was an arrival, an announcement of their arrival, because you stack it with the Duke and the Virginia Tech wins. The Georgia Tech game, as a player, did you believe in trap games? Did you believe in the concept of trap games? No,
but I believe in Georgia Tech wins ugly, and they play kind of ugly. That was my biggest fear. I would have never taken it for a Kevin Keatts team to be able to, all these junk defenses and all these things that they throw out at you, being able to, get the ball to the middle and change some things up on the fly. I would have never taken it for that. But, I think it just comes down to, Terquavion's a little bit more experienced. You got Jarkel, who's like, all right, let's slow it down and get into some stuff. But at the same time, when teams start to play ugly like that, and you could have a 5-minute stretch where it's like, what am I watching? But you also can now get out in transition to eliminate them from getting into their set defense. It helps, and I think that's kind of what it came down to. I think the first half, it took them a while to get used to that 1-3-1 or whatever you want to call it. But after a while, they got stops on the defensive end, and then they were able to push it a little bit, so they're not able to set up as quick.
You're one of the best free throw shooters in ACC history. Is there a difference in your mind in shooting free throws in the end of the game and in any other part of the game?
Yeah, it just depends on the situation. I mean, if it's a tight game, I mean, you're going to tighten up a little bit. But I told everybody, and I tell everybody to this day, when you're shooting and you feel a little bit of pressure on you, there are a lot things in this world, a lot worse things in this world than you shooting this free throw and losing this game. And it's hard for people to put them in that mindset. There's a lot worse things that can happen to you than not losing that game.
So you have a negative thought.
No, it's not even negative. It's just I love my NC State fans, but if I miss a free throw at the end of the game and we lose, they're going to badmouth me on social media. If that's the worst thing that happens to me in my life, I did something right. There's a lot worse than winning and losing basketball games. Just go up there. You've worked on it your whole life and believe in yourself and shoot your shot.
Where did your free throw routine come from? And when did you first settle on it?
So I used to do a 3-dribble spin the ball shot. And when I was in 5th grade, I went to the Elks National Hoop Shoot Contest.
Elks National Hoop Shoot Contest.
Yep, they still do it to this day.
Okay.
You take 10 shots, you take a break, and then take 15. So you get 25 shots. And I won I don't know if it's the regional or district, and then kept going. I went all the way to state, and then I was going to nationals. And at my middle school, my uncle was the gym teacher. So I didn't I'd skip lunch, and I'd go in the morning, and all we did was shoot free throws together. And it started to get to the point where it just took too long. So because we'd do little contests with each other, so I just took one dribble and shoot it. Because for me, it's like golf. It's like anything. The longer I stand over this and think about it, the more nervous I'm going to be. So it's like, let me just get this out of my hands as quick as I can. So I take one dribble, pause for a second, and shoot it. I don't want to have to think about it any more than I have to.
You're well known for your distaste of the Under Armour basketball when you're shooting free throws. Does the ball have to be in a certain position? Do you like looking at the logo? Do you want the logo away? Is it that sophisticated, or is it really just the one bounce and get it up?
Yeah, I try to get laces. That's the only thing. I don't think about the logo or anything like that. Anybody that's listening, just shoot it. Don't overthink it. As soon as you get in your head and start thinking about a shot, you've already messed it up. It's like golf is probably going to be my analogy, but you don't want to be standing over there thinking about your technique or anything like that. You just step up there and shoot it.
Were you a pick a point on the rim person, or were you it was all about the release?
Nope. And typically when I release it, I know if I'm making it or missing it. But everybody has something. My way may not be the best way. I tell everybody I don't like changing people's shots. Reggie Miller did not have a pretty shot, but it went in because he worked on it. He shot it all the time, and he believed it was going to go in. So there's 100 ways you can do it. You just got to find whatever your routine is, stick with it, and believe in it.
Scott Wood, do not enter the Elks National Shooting Contest against him. He will beat you. This, I promise. We'll talk a little bit about North Carolina on the other side, because you know what? As Mike Tomlin says, the standard is the standard. We'll be right back on this episode of Pack Therapy. So Saturday, NC State travels over to the Smith Center in Chapel Hill, where Kevin Keatts' team has won. His first team won there. But since then, well, it's been an adventure. Basically, anytime somebody named Roy Williams or Dean Smith is the coach, well, it's been an adventure. Luckily for NC State, one of those guys is no longer the coach, but Hubert Davis, of course, in his first year, ends up taking the Tar Heels to the national championship game. They ruined Mike Krzyzewski's final home game. They then beat Duke at the Final Four to get to the championship game where they lost to Kansas. They enter this year as the #1 team in the country. They're not even ranked for this game, which is unusual, particularly by their standard. Normally, Scott, when North Carolina has a group back like this one, and they had the Final Four success that they did have. They come back, they run roughshod. There's blood in the water. Your freshman year, 2009 is a great example. 2008, they go to the Final Four. They lose to Kansas. They come back. Sweet baby Jesus. That was Roy's best team.
Yeah.
Okay. That hasn't been the case this year. Now, they have everybody back but Brady Manek. In my opinion, Brady Manek, by the back half of the last year when Carolina got hot, was the bus driver, was the best player on that team.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they didn't have other good players, but everything kind of coalesced around him. This year, they don't have him. They still have Armando Bacot. They still have Caleb Love. They still have R.J. Davis. I mean, so they have a big three. But here we are. They have the same record that they did last year, 13-6, 5-3. They're good, but they're not great. What have you seen from the Tar Heels thus far this season?
Well, let me ask you a question. So, of their 4 losses, right? 4?
They have 6.
Okay, sorry. 6 losses. How many would we label as an absolute terrible loss to a very bad team?
None.
So, I think that's the first thing that kind of goes through my mind. I think they're a very, very good team, and they still have all the talent. I do think losing Brady is a big piece. For me, the only example I can kind of use it for is I went to a Sweet 16 my junior year. We lost Alex Johnson, Superman, and C.J. Williams. And again, on paper, you may not be like, oh, you just lost a lot of points or you lost this or that. But you lost 2 really good glue guys for your locker room, and everybody loved them as a teammate. We bring everybody back. We bring in 3 McDonald's All-Americans. Things should be better. Preseason 5, whatever you want. But
6,
it wasn't.
Yes.
But it wasn't. You know, you still got to mesh what's coming in. You know, you've got egos that are coming back that, you know, they just went to a national championship game. All of a sudden we've got NIL. Everybody's getting paid. There's a lot of other things going on. Now, I really do believe they'll figure it out. You know, it's hard to put your ego aside and say, hey, we're trying to win a national championship, not average 20 points a game. So I think they will slowly figure it out. They're going to have to do it quick because they're slowly running out of some time. I don't think anybody's questioning if they can be a tournament team or anything like that. We all think they'll be there, which is the key. You just got to get in. Now, you would prefer to have a good seed, but you just got to get in. But they just need to start getting hot, and I think they got all the pieces. I think they're well coached, but if they can put their ego aside and say, you know what, we're here to win, I think they'll be a very good team down the stretch.
You say they don't have any bad losses, and I agree. My question for you, though, is at what point you watched Georgia in the national championship game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Football.
Yeah.
And they came out, and they showed you who they were. They were about that life. They breathed fire. They showed you their fastball, right?
Yeah.
We're 19 games into this season. We have not seen Carolina's fastball. We have not seen them breathe fire.
But I'd also, to this point, football and basketball is very different right now. I feel like the landscape has totally changed. I feel like football, you're extremely top-heavy right now. You've got maybe 2 teams that have legitimate shots.
We're talking about the preseason #1 team. We're not talking about some middle-of-the-road team here.
I mean, I hear you, but there's a lot. I just feel like there's a lot more variables that go into the football than into the basketball. I do believe they're going to figure it out. I really do. But, again, I think I'm not in the locker room, and I'm also not watching every game. So this is just me from the perspective of what I would think is happening in that locker room. You know, there's probably a little bit of tension. Everybody thinks they're going to be pros.
You're supposed to be blasting people, and they're not. Well, and that can lean on you too.
And I think that's Sidney Lowe. Love him to death. One of the years, and it has always kind of sat with me, came into the locker room and put on the whiteboard 31 names, 29 names, 30 names, whatever it is, how many NBA teams there were. Showed us all the first-round draft picks of that year. Every single one of them made the tournament. And since then, it's always kind of sat with me. To get your exposure and to take the next jump, you have to win ball games. And I do think that the biggest issue right now with Carolina is they went to that game. They all kind of probably had opportunity to make a jump to turn professional or go do their dream. And I think they've gotten hung up on me instead of the team. And this again, this is just me from the outside looking in. I think once they figure it out and come together, whether that's a team meeting or watching game film from last year, I think they can turn it around. But I do understand. I mean, if you're the preseason one, you should be a force. But again, I feel like there's one too many egos probably in that locker room right now that just got to say, you know what, I got to do what's best for the team. Buy into that role.
Right. And I think they have a big three, and when their big three is good, they usually win.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're not blasting people. When Leaky Black hits a couple of threes, when a Puff Johnson is a kid we saw in the Final Four kind of step up in a role that he wasn't because of Baycott's, tender ankle in that Final Four in the championship game. Haven't seen a lot from him. Seth Trimble is a kid who, his brother is JP Tokoto, athletic kid. If Love had gone pro, which a lot of people had expected, Trimble would be their starter.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's those other supporting cast players who haven't developed and haven't supported and added to the whole. And when they do, and we've seen games where Johnson does play well. We've seen games where Leaky Black does add. And now Leaky doesn't have to score. But when he does, it's such a bonus. When he hits a three, it really lifts everything.
Yeah.
I say all of this knowing that we're going to see Carolina's best game on Saturday. They're bringing back the 93 team to be honored. So last year they brought back the 82 team to be honored, and we saw one of Carolina's best games last year when they played State. This is how the world works. I understand that. Caleb Love is shooting 27% from three. Your dad would have changed the locks on your house. He would have taken away your car. He would have done anything for you to not shoot 27%. Not that you ever shot 27% in your life, but think about that.
Yeah.
Their best shooter is shooting 27% from three right now.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's just, I'm telling you, there's something to feeling weight and feeling pressure. And I bet once they lost a couple games and everybody expected them to be so good and just run away with everything, they've got real pressure on them now. I think that it's very similar to what you said. I think NC State's going to see their best, whether or not they consider rivals or whatever. In that locker room, that's the only thing Hubert's talking about is this is 100% a rivalry game. We need to come out and whoop their you-know-what. So they'll be ready to play. But I think on the other side of it, I think NC State has good enough guard play to slow down some elite guards. My concern is the Baycott situation, being able to control him a little bit.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge, especially with Ibi Dwana missing the Georgia Tech game. I do think there is a half a chance we see Dusan Mohorsic return for this game, but I have no inside information on that.
Yeah, and so that is my one little scare. I think you're going to have to probably bring a little bit of a double team, which I've not seen Coach Keats do a lot over his career, but you're going to have to probably get the ball out of his hands a little bit. But with that, if you do send the double, you got to have the understanding that somebody's going to be open taking shots. So it's very easily, that Leaky or someone that hasn't been shooting well is very capable to get more open looks than they have been, and they get that confidence going.
I apologize. I had my years wrong. Your first year wasn't 08-09. Your first year was 9-10. That was one of the lost NIT years for Carolina.
Okay, I didn't have a good record against Carolina.
So you go over there the first time you go over there. You're from Indiana. I don't think you grew up really giving two things about North Carolina basketball. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect you did not. But you go over there the first time. You see every jersey in the history of the world up there. I mean, there's a little bit of awe even for Marion, Indiana, Scott Wood, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, and I'm gonna let everybody in on a secret. I don't tell many people. So I grew up a Duke fan. So I had Duke hats on. Everything.
A white shooter grew up a Duke fan. That is bizarre. I never would have come up with that.
We had a lot of Duke stuff in the house, and the reason why
and your pops played at Western Carolina.
Yeah, for a year. The reason I wore number 15 was because of Vince Carter.
Really?
And a lot of people don't.
Because of all of your dunking prowess?
It was. But see, I remember Vince from his Toronto days, not necessarily
Okay.
his Carolina days. But you do, man. And growing up in Indiana, maybe not.
You're too young for Steve Alford.
Understanding
right?
a lot
Basically?
of that. But you understand Indiana basketball. You understand the history of basketball because you're from Indiana. You understand that you have a packed 8,700 gym every night when I'm playing high school basketball. So you understand the emphasis of the history and everything that goes on. So you really do, especially for me, when you get there, you take it all in. You realize the history that's been here, that you get a, step ground on a hollowed place that, some of the greatest basketball players have ever have gone to war on and tried to win a basketball game. So you do think about it. But I don't think once that ball goes up, that's something you think about anymore. I think it's, you're thinking about your scout. You're thinking about who you're guarding, what you're trying to accomplish. But I will say that there's a lot of guys in that moment that they kind of get stuck on it like, wow, this is a cool place to play.
You remember your first game there? I got the box score in front of me.
No.
74-61. Close at half. 1 of 7 from 3. Talk about that at some point here. Hopefully it wasn't Marcus Ginyard that had you on the lock.
Hey, we could get Roy in here. You get Roy in here. He said right here, and he'd tell you the one person he took out of the game every single time I played Carolina. It wasn't Tracy. It wasn't Dennis Horner. It wasn't Richard. It wasn't C.J. Leslie. It wasn't I guarantee if you went and saw the scout, it had one thing, because Joe would put on there, if Scott gets 4 threes, they're undefeated. And they wasn't letting me get 4 threes. I can promise you that.
Hey, man, you show respect by showing no respect, as Jeff Bizdelic said.
They guarded me really well every single time I played them.
Fair. You have a pick for this game, since you are Mr. Positivity of this program, and you already know how I think this game is going to go?
Do I have to pick?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm going to pick NC State because I'm a homer. But also, I don't think it's – I think they need to win every game they can get, but they're playing really well right now. For me, they win the game if they can find a way to limit Baycott from dominating the glass and scoring over 17 or 18. If they do that, I think NC State wins. If Baycott has over 19, I don't think NC State wins.
Here's NC State's path to the NCAA tournament. They need to split with Carolina. They need to split with Wake Forest. If they do those two things and take care of their other business, they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You want to fool around and find out and get swept by Carolina and get swept by Wake Forest, you might not like where you are on Selection Sunday. So all they've done with this 4-game winning streak is put themselves in position to be in position. I think NC State's a good basketball team. I do think they're going to fight on Saturday. Ultimately, I think not only does Baycott have his way, I think Caleb Love pops out of whatever funk he's in right now, hits a couple of threes. Carolina wins. Hopefully it'll be a close game. Hopefully we'll see the fight that we saw in the second half of that Miami game and the aggressiveness that they came out with on the road at Virginia Tech. You combine those things, you give yourself a chance. But, this could be like the Miami. It's a home and home now.
Yeah.
You maybe you lose over there. You got to remember it when they come back to your place. So we'll see what NC State ends up doing on Saturday.
We're riding a high, but again, there's a lot of season left. They got to continue to get better. Now, if Dusan was in this game, I'd feel a lot more confident. The only thing that scares me is DJ could probably get into some foul trouble, and then who you got to guard?
And all of a sudden, the wheels come off.
Yeah.
which has a tendency to happen.
Yeah.
Over at the Smith Center. We'll check it out though. We'll be back next week. That's Scott Wood. You can catch us on Apple, Spotify, the Googles, you name it, or you can watch all of our episodes on WRALSportsFan.com. See you next week right here on Pack Therapy.